All right. Dr. Terry Trammell, husband of endurance karting superstar Rhonda Trammell, and a student of Anthony Joseph Foyt, MD.
Professional photographer.
Yeah.
And, of course, completely against the nickname Tear Bear.
Yep, we tried.
If you could describe this dinner with racers in one word, what would it be?
Quizzical.
Quizzical.
Huh.
That's
Well,
never
a
been
first.
used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, leave it to the doctor.
Yeah. Master of language.
And now for Dinner with Racers, presented by
Continental Tire.
with your hosts, Ryan Eversley and Sean Heckman.
Placeholder radio sound. I'm a driver. I'm very angry. This is the sound of a driver on the radio during a race.
What do you think I should order?
All right, and welcome to Dinner with Racers. I am Sean Heckman.
I am Ryan Eversley.
And you might be hearing the sounds of hail in the background because we are literally driving from Kentucky through Tennessee into Atlanta, Georgia, because we are wrapping up a 7-day, 7-night voyage into Indianapolis, Indiana, where we recorded a shorter version of Dinner with Racers than you may be used to. We got 10 amazing meals out of our 1 week. And generally, this is kind of how we're going to do the series.
Yeah, we'd like to get away from the traditional long road trip because we've been on the road doing that for so long that we end up losing out on other opportunities in our real life. And we thought maybe we'd be a little less burnt out, get you guys some better content, and let's break it up over the course of the year. So hopefully in the future we can go to Charlotte, maybe Daytona, all over the place, and kind of grab as many episodes as we can in a short period of time.
So, wrapping up this 1,500-mile journey in our, what car, Ryan?
This is a 2017 Acura MDX.
And what tires are taking us through this hailstorm that we're driving through?
Are we going back to the original?
Yeah, we're going back to the original.
Continental Tires.
Continental Tire.
Continental Tires.
LX Sport.
Continental Tires.
Whatever tires these are, that's what we have. The LX Sport.
They're black and round and they're awesome.
Yeah.
Go buy them.
So, the next stop in our journey took us to beautiful Brownsburg, Indiana, where we met up with none other than Dr. Terry Ryan
Tear Bear.
Trammell. Now, if you're not familiar with Dr. Trammell, he is sort of the doctor of the racing scene, the guy you want to run into if you come across a problem that maybe you need to be patched up for. So he's primarily known in the IndyCar scene, but he's also worked on NASCAR drivers, USAC drivers, sports car drivers. Dr. Trammell is sort of the orthopedic surgeon of the motorsport scene. He, for a long time, had a day job at a place called Ortho Indy, but he was always a long-time consultant and long-time this hail, oh my God.
Yeah, we're literally hydroplaning.
Yeah, this is awesome. And he's been a full-time member of IndyCar's safety team forever. So Dr. Trammell has been through it all. He has seen it all, and the bigger picture with him is that since the 1970s, he has been part of the overall safety initiative in motorsport, but especially in IndyCar.
Tear Bear grew up around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He got to do a intern-style program early on where medical students would help out with the small issues that happen at the track, and in return they get some tickets. And so he was a big fan of the sport, ended up moving into the photography side of it as a professional photographer, sort of. And later in life found himself reunited with the sport when none other than Danny Ungaius ends up on his operating table with a major need of repairing of some legs. And fortunately, with Dr. Trammell's efforts, he was able to race again. And that kind of started the entire Trammell legacy, which has helped many drivers over the course of their career stay in the sport. And he's not just there to help them, he's there to help them get back in the race car, which is a pretty neat thing about him.
So here's some of the quick things you're going to learn about. You're going to learn about becoming a doctor by accident.
His badass racing wife.
Fan safety in the 1970s, including motorcycle tracheotomies.
Ooh, I forgot about that story.
Yeah.
Sleepovers with drivers, which is a concept that we also had.
Being an owner of an Acura NSX.
That's right.
We also learn about just how many drivers he has kind of bolted back together.
And he does not like to be called Tear Bear.
So once again, we headed out to Brownsburg, Indiana at the Boulder Creek Dining Company where, well, Ryan, what did you have?
I actually had the Sean Heckman special. I had probably the best chicken sandwich I've ever had in my life.
And I had a exceptional chicken sandwich as well. I don't know if I'd call it the best, but I really, really liked it. And once again, thank you to Acura for getting us there.
And of course,
No, you're doing this.
oh, you want me to do it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what you do.
All right, that's my
That's
thing
your
now?
part.
That's my
Yeah,
thing.
that's your thing now.
All right, here we go. Now, right. Well, of course we couldn't have done it without Continental Tire.
Tear Bear.
All right, we're gonna start in 5, 4, 3, 2.
So, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? I'm Ryan. I'm Terry. Hey, nice to meet you, Terry.
Sean. Great to meet you, Terry.
Hey, there you go.
Have a seat.
Kinds of gadgetry.
Oh yeah, we're very high budget, as you can tell.
High budget. Yeah.
Here, put that on. We'll talk about it. There you go. Perfect. We waste no time. We get right into this.
Okay.
So, welcome, by the way.
Well, thank you.
So-
My
Yeah.
pleasure.
So, do you know anything about us, or have you ever heard of us? It's okay to say no.
No.
Have you heard of a podcast before?
Yes.
Okay.
You've been on a
Have
podcast.
You've been on.
I have.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
By accident.
Oh, wait. How does that happen?
I have. I have been on.
How do you
Yeah.
accidentally get on a podcast?
I thought I was doing a radio interview.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And then
Yeah.
you realize you downgraded.
So yeah, no, it was great. It was great. And one of my friends, or one of my professional acquaintances, when I was doing medical stuff, was a beer person,
Okay.
and he had a podcast about beer that was a big deal.
So he decided, why not, like the world's most renowned open wheel doctor, talk about beer?
Right. Right.
Sensible.
I actually just got asked to be on a beer podcast. I don't know if it's the same guy, but I was like, yeah, I like beer. Sure. Yeah.
All right. So well then let's get into this. What's
Okay.
the beer of choice?
My beer of choice. I'm not a big beer drinker,
Okay.
so
Just
I'm a
straight
summertime
whiskey.
beer drinker,
Okay.
and I have really simple taste. I drink the first 3 or 4 swallows out of a cold Corona Light,
Yeah.
Okay.
as cold as I can get it.
Yeah.
And as
enough.
soon as it warms up, then I don't want it anymore.
Then you're done. Then you're out.
So you're
All
a
right.
beer chugger.
Yeah,
not a
beer
beer drinker. I got you.
Okay, that works. Right.
All right. Then what's the Terry Trammell? When we start our own Dinner with Racers bar, and we
Okay.
name all of our drinks, the Terry Trammell is going to be what?
My drink of choice.
Yeah, your drink of choice.
Oh, my
yeah,
drink
yeah.
of
Sorry,
choice
that's
is
an
probably-
overcomplicated way of
Yeah,
asking. What do you drink?
yeah, it's very simple. Vodka.
Yes.
And
Right.
just in a glass with some ice on it.
Oh, there you go.
You're
You're
good
not
to
messing
go.
around.
And then I'll mess around with it a little bit, but not much.
Now is it fuzzies?
So to turn it into a Moscow Mule.
Okay.
And then I discovered this concoction that first time I had it was at the Tommy Bahamas in Hawaii. They muddle up some bay leaves and add some grapefruit, but you have to have the Hawaiian grapefruit to make it work.
Oh, okay.
And it's a pretty awesome
Way to go.
way to kill vodka. And then if I'm going to not have to get up in the morning,
Yeah.
I'll settle into a chair somewhere with nice Irish whiskey.
There you go.
But
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm an alcohol snob, I suppose.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. You ever drink with Sam Schmidt?
I haven't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, he likes his tequila, apparently. That's his thing.
Well, that was the big one before I ran into Irish whiskey.
There you go.
That was
Okay.
Yeah.
the Irish whiskey happened by accident. I was looking for tequila, and
Mm-hmm.
the guy that owned the store or worked in the store through his very thick Irish brogue, tried to talk me into trying some Irish whiskey. I did. I liked it. And
Here we are.
ever
Yeah, ever
since.
since.
Yeah. So you have a couple nicknames.
Okay.
Dr. T.
That works.
You like to be
Yeah,
like to be
Dr.
called
T's
that?
fine, yeah.
Can I call you Tear Bear?
Tear Bear? No.
That's a no.
that would be
big-
a no.
I rhyme
All right.
everybody's name that has an air with bear,
Okay.
no matter
Okay.
what. But that's
What-
the second doctor to turn me down.
I had to stop and think about that because one of my partners was Care Bear because
Yeah.
his last name was Care.
yeah,
Sure.
see, that's
See?
what I would
He
call that
looked
person.
like a bear.
Oh,
So
perfect.
Okay.
fit.
Care Bear.
So it hits too close to home for you.
Fit me.
Yeah,
Okay.
so Tear Bear's out.
What
Yeah.
about, given your occupation, what about T-Bone? Can we call you T-Bone?
Actually, my golfing nickname
Oh, here
was
we
by
go.
accident
Okay.
was Lefty Bones because I'm
Okay.
left-handed
Right.
and I'm Bones.
Okay.
So I'm kind of left-handed.
Okay.
That's the story we can talk about.
I have one last pitch on a nickname for you.
Okay.
T-Pain.
T-Pain. Nah. Oh,
We're going to
that
stick with
isn't-
Dr. T.
Let's just
stick with Dr.
Just
T.
Dr. Terry Trammell,
Yeah.
please. Yeah.
We have in the day we used to keep wounded drivers when they were poor and had nowhere to go in the lower level of our home, which is commonly known as a basement.
Okay.
And it has a mother-in-law suite in it kind of place. And the guys turned it into the dungeon. And in order to be a decoration on the wall. It became the Wall of Pain,
Right.
because in order to be on the wall, you had to have been down there
You had
in
to be
pain.
down there, right.
And if you weren't in pain when you got down there, we fixed that.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so give us some names.
Well, probably the most verbal is Tony Kanaan.
Yeah, we've heard that from a lot of
he,
people.
he has a lot to say about the Wall of Pain and the dungeon and the.
Right.
We call it Rhonda's Rehab Ranch because that's my wife's name.
Yeah.
And I came home from work one day, and Tony was a visitor on several occasions, along with some others. And I came home from work I was at work one day, and one of my partners said, come in here. There was a TV lounge. He goes, "Isn't that your house?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, it is." I said, "What is that on?" He said, "Well, that's ESPN, and they're showing this special on Rhonda's Rehab Ranch."
Right.
And so I got home, and as soon as I walked in the house, Tony goes, "Well, let me explain." I said, "Okay." So anyway, that was one of those.
Nice.
So
All right, so just to set some context here, so it's the Monday of sort of the first week of practice. I believe it's sort of rookie and refresher day.
Right.
And you said you didn't have to be on site today. Was that why today was a good day?
today's a good day because today there's no activity at the track.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
It's shut down.
Okay.
And I said 7 because I never know what that really means.
Sure.
And when I think I've got the day off, sometimes I get a call that says I don't have the day off.
Right.
Right.
And it's not because somebody's hurt now, because I'm no longer in the repair business. I'm in the full-time prevention business.
Yeah, we read that in a couple articles.
So
So what is your paddock name? So you're like Dr. T is what we hear, but like what does Takuma call you?
he's kind of formal.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's still Dr. Trammell.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about Tony Kanaan? He's probably the.
Tony Kanaan, I
Yeah.
probably can't say what he calls me in public.
You can though.
T. Most of the time it's just T.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because he's TK and I'm T.
So this is this is a very broad question, but this has come up in a few of our podcast episodes before because I'm kind of obsessed with this concept, the movie of the week thing.
Yeah. Yep.
So in every Lifetime movie of the week, there's
Sports story.
Yeah, sports.
or
Like there's a car crash and now the figure skater is stuck in the hospital ward, and
high school football
the high
player
school football
falls the
player,
wrong way.
and he is told, "You will never play football again." And I have this theory that doctors don't say that. They give like probabilities and like, here's the reality of what you're facing, but they're never going to literally say, "You will never do X again."
Yeah, I can't recall. Well, I can to start over another way. One of the first things they teach you in orthopedics, certainly, is there's no always or never,
Exactly.
either one.
Yeah.
And so anything can happen, and that applies to recovery.
Right.
And obviously there are sports stories out the wazoo of people that
Miraculous.
We're never
were never
supposed
going
to
to do
whatever.
anything, and then
right.
double amputee wins how many gold medals?
Right.
So in medical
So-
school, they teach you never to say never.
Yeah,
And
you
then
don't-
in acting school, they're like, always say never.
So
Yeah,
you've
don't
literally
say
never
never.
said you'll never drive
No,
to
I
anybody.
don't. Well,
Yeah.
no, because I've been really fortunate because of the patients. There are two groups of people that are a doctor's dream: race car drivers and Indiana farmers, and that probably applies to Ohio and Illinois, the farmer part, not where you're from.
Sure.
Because the drivers don't know what else to do, and so they'll always go back to some kind of driving.
Right.
Um,
And farmers have to farm. They don't really have a choice.
This is their livelihood, right?
The longer they're not making money. Right. They got to eat.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I read your note
Well,
about that before.
And
I
even
was like, okay.
even the guys that farm that are doing well, still got to farm.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's what they do.
Got to keep working.
So yeah, our conversation driver-wise is pretty much routine. It's like not if, but when.
Right.
Right.
And so we give them realistic expectations. And Zanardi's got to be the best of the best.
Sure.
Right.
He's proven that you can do anything you want to do.
Right.
Right. All right. So just for those who don't know your background,
Yeah.
so Indiana boy,
Indiana
up
boy,
here.
born and bred.
and where? Because you're not from like Indianapolis per se.
No,
You're
Richmond, which is a border town. It's
Okay.
I-70 at Ohio.
Okay. And Ohio, is that how you
Yeah.
pronounce it? You said Ohio, like we can't
Well,
call it Ohio. if you want to
Ohio,
be-
like the state.
Right.
No, Richmond is the
Because
address for
because
Richmond
it's on the
is
border.
Indiana
Right.
in Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah.
Ohio. You
Yeah.
can't say with it hard O.
Well, because you're on the border
Oh,
of
I
Indiana.
got you.
There
Copy.
you
Yeah,
go.
because
Okay,
like you
six-
can walk into
I'm here.
Ohio.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're
I'm
back.
back.
Which is
All
very,
right.
very important for a 16-year-old in high school because Ohio
Yeah.
is back then was a 3-2 beer state.
Right.
And
Ah,
so
copy.
all you had to do is get across the line.
Okay,
Yeah.
copy.
So
Copy.
probably the smartest guy we've ever talked to
Yeah.
is all about some drinking.
I'm liking this so far.
Yeah, we're fine here. Yeah.
What did mom and dad do?
My dad is an electrical engineer, worked for a power company, and was the smart guy in the family. My mom is a typical Italian mom. She's
Okay.
still going full speed.
Was she from Italy or Italian?
She was born here,
Okay.
but she was first generation here.
Copy.
And she's still going strong. We did Mother's Day yesterday, and
Yeah.
she's 94.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
she made us stop counting at 90. So.
Okay.
Was there in your hometown, was there a mill?
Well, yeah, Richmond there was a cabinet business, but what Richmond's known for is there's a huge Alcoa plant that made wire.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, that would be your mill.
Back then,
Yeah, so there was a wire mill.
all those yellow buses come from Richmond Wayne bus or whatever. And then how I got interested in racing is my dad went from the power company to becoming the facilities engineer for what was then Perfect Circle.
Okay.
And they made piston rings and sleeve castings and
Sure.
sponsored race cars. So I started going to dirt tracks when I was in junior high school.
And your dad wasn't a racer himself.
No, he just went because they made the sleeve castings and the piston rings and
Yeah.
so on and so forth. He was a South Carolina boy, so racing in South Carolina is driving your car to work. You know,
Yeah,
that's
right.
kind of
Right. Yep.
it's normal.
Yep.
And so there was exposure, and I really, really liked the dirt stuff because you could go and you just get so dirty, and
Yep.
nobody cared. You could stand on the track for all the.
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah.
My most favorite race in the area was when they had called the Hoosier 100.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
sure,
uh,
at the fairgrounds.
Way back when, you could stand outside the fourth turn between the grandstands, and there was like a little wire fence, like chicken wire,
Yeah.
and you'd kind of push it around and get where you wanted to be.
Right.
And so the badge of honor was if you got cut, if you got hit
Yeah,
hard enough to actually have blood.
Right, yeah.
That was,
Yeah,
that was a big
You're
deal.
somebody now.
Yeah, and they're like looking at this 12-year-old kid like, someday that kid's going to be a safety innovator.
Yeah, I know firsthand. You got to put a wall here.
right. That's amazing.
Well, I mean, right there is kind of the testament to kind of where you fall in the sport, in the sense that, like, obviously you're a big part of this, the safety movement we've had over the last couple of decades, but you were the kid that had his hands wrapped around the fence, so you understand that kind of nostalgic love of going to those kind of events, and danger's the wrong word, but it sounds like you understood what
Well, you wanted to
visceral
feel it. I mean,
of it.
you wanted to be in it,
Yeah.
and then the next step was to actually get a pass or credential so you could get on the inside.
We're still waiting for that.
And that wasn't nearly as exciting because all the dirt goes out.
Right. Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it's taking away one of the visceral experiences.
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
It's getting pelted by stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you go from dirt track, bum kid with your dad to photographer's assistant at the Speedway?
Okay, my next door neighbor was a pro photographer.
Yeah.
When I was when I first started in residency, and he knew I had a sports interest and so on and so forth. Plus, he was a pretty big guy, and I was not a big guy, so I would help carry stuff just because I wanted to go to the track.
Be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got all kinds of cool assignments. I actually still have the $5 bill from the first picture that I sold.
Oh wow.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah.
It was of a young lady looking into somebody's sunglasses who were looking at her
Something.
attributes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And
Check it out.
I thought it was kind of a cool picture. Somebody thought so, and they bought it for $5.
Nice.
And that was my
So you're a
only
professional photographer.
Yeah, that was my professional debut
Right.
and my only professional sale.
Yeah. Right. Ended on a high note. Yeah.
So
So-
you go to Vanderbilt. You did your residency there as well. Is that right?
No, I came back here. I got an engineering degree, Vanderbilt. I have a degree.
Okay.
I went there to be a
This isn't going to work this dinner.
what do they call it? Biomechanical engineer back then, and along about 3/4 of the way through, they said, we don't really have a degree in that. We have a degree program, but the piece of paper is going to say you get choices. And so I said, okay, well, I got a whole lot of chemistry. I'll just be a chemical engineer, and
Right.
so that's what I was. And there wasn't a whole, it was not like it is now because there wasn't a whole lot of distinction. There were 3 or 4 different tracks: electrical, mechanical, chemical, civil, and I think that's about it back then. And so you had a whole lot of everything. And then at the end, you kind of picked what you were going to grow up to be.
Right.
And I did that. And I said, okay, so I have a degree in chemical engineering. And as a senior, I had a work-study job to do biomechanical research, and I was testing dialysis membranes.
Okay, yeah.
And they a variety of substances. And this is kind of a little side story that probably gets somebody exhumed, but
Good.
The chemical engineering department at Vanderbilt was very, very small then. So all the professors knew all the students, and it was very homey. And then we found out when we graduated, they had a consulting company, and the reason we had so much real-world experience is we were actually doing their
Real work.
Okay.
So they had multiple solutions to problems. Well,
That's how we source our editing.
Yeah, right.
so that's how I got into the dialysis membrane stuff. And I started, 6 weeks or so before the actual semester, my senior year started, because I went and was doing work. And I had to meet weekly with my faculty advisor. And I came in one day at his office, and he's like putting his books and stuff into boxes and cleaning out his desk. And I'm like panicked because school hasn't even started yet. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, he said, I'm going on sabbatical. He said, actually, I'm going to go to medical school. And I'm like dumbfounded. And he said, so I have one last piece of advice for you. If you're going to be a biomedical engineer, biomechanical at that time, and work with doctors, they won't listen to you unless you are one. He said they don't talk to anybody that doesn't have MD behind their name. He said, they're all assholes. Okay, so now I am one.
Right.
So there was no lifelong yearning to be an MD. This was just sort of
this
kind of
happened.
sandwiched into it.
This was like, holy shit, what am I going to do
Right.
now?
Yeah.
And so I was
8 more
running
years
around
of school.
campus. The guy that was in charge of getting people into medical school was like laughed when I came and said, I want to go to medical school. And he was like, not in a million years. Right. It's not going to happen. So I took 2 semesters of biology and 1 semester with the freshman nurses, and it was an interesting experience.
Right. Wow.
Wow.
And he gave you a perfect way to call him an asshole.
Yeah, I didn't do it.
You didn't do
I
it?
didn't take it. That'll make sense later. So at the time, because could you just do that? Just 4 years into college, just say, I want to do. Was there an MCAT and all the?
Oh yeah, I had to take the MCATs and
Yeah.
all that jazz, and go knocking on doors and begging and so on and so forth. And then the places I got accepted to, I couldn't afford.
Right.
So it was like, and I begged my way into IU.
That's cool.
I had the grades for it and all that stuff, but the traditional pathways, and those were melting down then. I mean, I may have been one of the first engineers to matriculate at IU.
Right.
But there were lots of others that came afterwards.
So you go to IU, 75 to 79 for your medical degree.
Right.
Eventually, that leads you to a spinal surgery fellowship.
Right.
So again, here.
Yeah, well, my
8 years earlier, you weren't even going to medical school.
Exactly.
Now you're doing like the hardest thing you could possibly do. What?
Well, I got invited to be a hand surgeon, and I really liked hand surgery, but I can't sit for very long.
Okay.
My derriere does not tolerate being seated for long periods of time.
We're a little different.
We're a little ADD,
Okay.
And so anyway, I really was interested in spinal surgery because it's very three-dimensional, a lot of moving parts, and so it was very appealing. And there weren't a whole lot of places in the world that were renowned for spine surgery. One of them was in Minneapolis, and I went there and interviewed, and really I liked the guys. However, the one surgery that I went and watched, everybody was over 6 feet tall, all the staff guys.
Right.
And I was like, this isn't going to happen. I'll be on one of those little step stools and I'll fall off and break my neck.
Right. So I'd read that you'd actually been doing some medical stuff at the track prior to that, like assisting in the medical.
Well, they had a program a long time ago.
Yeah.
When Dr. Hanna was the medical person, where they would have medical students come and you had to work 2 sessions, and you'd bring wear your little white coat, you had all your books, and you had a stethoscope, all the things that were totally useless.
Yeah,
Right,
look the
yeah,
part.
but you looked the
right.
part.
You looked the
Yeah.
part.
And you'd sit in the ambulance, which was a hearse.
Yeah.
And
yeah, right. Yeah.
you were
As you
supposed
do.
to administer to.
And this was like early 70s?
Yeah,
like
it was like 73,
3-ish?
5, 6.
Yeah.
No, 70. It had to be. Yeah, it was 73 because 73 was the year that Saltwater crashed and the
Oh,
race
right.
went on for a month and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, so I go and I do this, and the whole time I'm terrified because I'm not sure I could open a Band-Aid, let alone actually take care of somebody.
Right.
So I got by my 2 sessions with nothing bad happened, and I ended up going to the race day because that's the deal. You went, you did these.
You get like a ticket
free
and
access.
whatever.
You got 2 tickets and 2 box lunches.
Cool.
Well,
Living large.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, this is going to be fun. You get to sit in the first turn, and it's a good one. Well, they didn't bother to tell us that only your guest got to sit in the seats because you had to go work in some infield tent.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I had this fabulous assignment. I was in a tent, literally, where the tunnel comes out between 3 and 4, and there was a space there with an old Army nurse that actually knew something.
Okay.
And I can't remember if there was another guy there or not, but all I know is everything came through the door with some catastrophic thing that I had no idea what I was supposed to do with.
Yeah.
They set a bomb, they set an aerial bomb off, and all the motorcyclists would come in first. They'd been, lined up. Well, they always ran over somebody. Well, this time they ran over a track worker, and he ended up being paralyzed. But the guy that ran over him clotheslined himself on a wire because they had wires on poles to keep you from going in places where you weren't supposed to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
So this was just like an expected thing.
Yeah, he had an
Like,
open
it's just-
trachea laceration. I was like, I've never even read about some of this
Right.
stuff, let alone
Right.
seen anything.
And this was like an
Right.
everyday annual thing that they would go through.
Oh yeah, the nurse was just cool about stuff. She just
I've seen it all, kid.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I had no idea that. All I knew is they didn't do the race. I didn't know that there had been a big crash on the front race because we didn't have all the radios and all that stuff. It was just by word of mouth. And
'Cause you're so
most of
busy
them
in the
taking
tent.
care of drunks and diabetics that were drunk.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So I said, "That's it. I'm not coming back to this deal."
Yeah, this isn't what I
And
want to do.
no.
Yeah.
I said, I like the track, but I think I'll come as a photographer, and I had the opportunity to do that, so that's how I ended up doing it.
Okay. Did that diminish your love for the sport or the speedway? Like kind of seeing it from that side?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So that can be
Just,
traumatic for a lot of people to see stuff like that and also think, no, that's not what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the beautiful speedway and all the luster and glory.
I had a particular love of the animals, I guess.
Okay.
Those
Those are your people?
the snake pit was
Yeah.
fascinating. I didn't
Absolutely.
participate I stayed on my side of the
Right.
fence.
You stand there and nature is amazing.
You enjoy it. Yeah, exactly. People watching. It's
Yeah,
a sport.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
people watching
Yeah,
it. And so I didn't. I
Didn't
was
matter.
glad to see that they were that enthusiastic
Right.
about
Yeah,
what
that's
they
a
were
passion.
doing.
That's a passion.
Exactly.
Now we're
Yeah.
jumping around a bit. Now, obviously, like paralysis from motorcycle brigades and unseen tracheotomies, maybe not so much. But like, are the medical calls within the speedway today still more often than not fan stuff?
Oh yeah, they treat a huge number of fans, and that's the dichotomy is we've gotten better and better and better at protecting the drivers,
Right.
and
The fans, they got to help
fans are
themselves.
more contained.
Right.
They're the mud and the slop and
You can
what
say
happens.
it.
I mean, I literally have taken care of people that when the snake pit was in the first turn,
Yeah.
who got run over and didn't know it till they came to the next day.
Right. Right. Yeah.
They bring them in, they're still covered with mud. And,
Right.
and how'd that happen? He says, I got no idea. I woke up and I had a broken leg.
Yeah.
And it's got tire marks on it.
I went to the 595 and we were in the snake pit for like 5 seconds basically, and my dad was showing me, he's like, yeah, watch all these idiots, they're all going to climb on each other's shoulders and try to build a human tower, and there's like 25 people doing this and climbing up each other, and eventually they all fell down, and it was just like broken bones everywhere. It's like, we're leaving right now. I'm like, where are we? Yeah.
Oh yeah, the greatest medical training ground was the Coca-Cola lot, when they let people camp there all month. And it was just a steady stream of things that you would
Things that
never
aren't in the
ever
books.
see.
Yeah.
Right. How'd you get that?
That's not possible.
Maybe in a war you'd see stuff like that, but not recreationally. So
Yeah, I read that Steve Olvey, who's been a longtime partner of
Right.
yours through this whole thing, he had the same thing. He was more likely to be handing out Band-Aids and aspirin and sunscreen to drunk fans than actually like putting race car drivers back together. That was kind of the deal.
well, in the day that was kind of the thing is you wanted to be the guy that had the sunscreen because
Right. That's a big deal.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, you're the hero.
Like hand to God.
Right. Right, exactly.
How did you But I don't know. How did you end up in spinal specifically? Like, was there something about that, or was it literally just because it was more handy?
I had an interest in child deformities and scoliosis and a lot of that stuff. That was
that something that ran in your family, or
my mother has really bad scoliosis, and
Okay.
I'm sure that played a role in it.
Right.
I was in practice for a couple of years, and the guy who trained me ended up operating on my mom, and that's kind of a cute story. When I was still a fellow, I brought all of her X-rays because we had her X-rays for 40 years or whatever, and I brought them up, and we had this big conference, and everybody from the whole city was there. All the fellows had to go to all the conferences, whether it was if you were the hand guy, you still had to go to the spine things and so forth. So I put these X-rays all up, and the guy that was training me got up and he would critique the presentation and so on and so forth. And he was just livid that anybody in their right mind would let this go on to this degree and not treat it. And it was just really ranting and raving and so on and so forth. And he took a pause and he goes, "Where is this woman?" I said, "Ed, that's my mother."
My mom.
So, anyway.
The Rick Mears crash in Canada is what brings you back to the sport. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was the real drawing card. What started it is the reason I ended up doing this at all. I had a nice cush assignment in 81. I was supposed to be on the outside of the third turn taking pictures, and Don Blake was a photographer.
So you never stopped doing speedway stuff. It's just you literally were now the quote pro photographer making total net of $5.
I got a sign, and I got a place to sit, and I had a credential and all that stuff. So I was supposed to be outside the third turn wall because that was in the day when there were no stands or anything. You could like kneel down, put your camera on the wall, and so on and so forth. And then on Friday before the race, my most senior partner came and back up a little bit. Part of the deal with the new boy on the block in a group in Ortho Indy, which was Orthopedics Indianapolis then, was the new boy on the block had to take ER call on all the holidays for a year.
It's like hazing almost.
And a seniority thing.
Yeah, rite of passage. So it's okay. I was cool with that. However, I didn't think about race day as being a holiday. It's not Memorial Day.
Right.
So he came like on Friday and he explained, he said, the race day is part of the call thing. So you got 2 days in a row, not one.
Right.
I said, well, I can't do that. I'm supposed to be taking pictures. And he got a little gruff and he goes, this isn't a request. This is part of your contract.
Yeah.
So I called Don. Well, I went home and I told Don, I said, I can't go. And I can't do it. And I had to stay at the hospital because that's part of the deal. And listened to it on the radio, and Danny O'Gaius crashed. And they were like, they didn't know if he was alive or dead or whatever. And they hauled him into the ER, and his legs dangling. And one of the ER guys, back then there was a gradation system for what's salvageable and what wasn't.
Right.
And he had a non-salvageable extremity.
Meaning
amputation.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, that's not part of the equation here. I'm the new boy on the block. This is my first big deal. We're not taking his leg off.
Yeah.
And
were these compound fractures I read?
Oh yeah.
So like bones are sticking out.
Blew out.
His
bones going everywhere. Right. And there's cut the blood vessel too.
And other than working, the infield, had you seen anything like that at the hospital yourself?
Motorcycle stuff.
Okay.
Kind of. But those usually came in amputated. So
right.
They
sure.
were,
It's already
they'd be hanging on by a crappy skin.
At that age, was there? Was there such a thing as like being starstruck or anything like? If you're not really hanging around the driver, so to speak, it's Danny O'Gaius. I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I really didn't know who he was. I mean, I knew he was an IndyCar driver, but the big deal was we're not taking his leg off.
Right.
And fortunately for me, the cardiovascular surgeon that was going to have to repair the artery walked by, and I grabbed him, and we operated together because he did exposures you do a lot of spine surgery through the chest.
Okay.
Sure.
So he was my exposure guy, and I said, Gil, what are we going to do? And he goes, he'd done 2 or 3 tours
Vietnam,
of
right?
Vietnam.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So Gil looks at this, he goes, this is no big deal. So we'll revascularize, that'd be fine. You just got to make it be still so I can put the artery together. I said, well, I got that. I got that shot. I can do that. And so we did. And long story short, his legs survived. Wasn't very pretty, but it survived.
Yeah.
And it healed. And so the next year I'd go back and I go over to the office to get my credentials because I got a photographer's pass and all that stuff, and they didn't have it. And I was like, I don't understand. Did I do something wrong?
Right.
And they said, oh, no, you have an all-access medical pass. I do? Oh, yeah, it's over in the hospital. Really? I said, well, I don't do medical stuff. And the lady who was really nice that was in charge of the whole deal said, well, you do now.
I guess you do.
So for a long time, for 3 or 4 years, I carried a bag full of cameras and my medical thing. So I'd go take pictures until somebody crashed, and then I'd run back to the hospital. And one day, Dr. Bach calls me, and he goes, geez, he says, I don't know how to tell you this, but you got to ditch the cameras. And I was like, why? And he goes, well, the photographers complained that I had access that they didn't.
Oh, wow.
Because they'd see me go into the hospital with this bag of cameras.
Right.
And I'd throw it in the office as I'd go by because the last thing I wanted
it's not fair.
Yeah. And, some days they'd lay there for 3 days before I'd get back from the hospital.
Sure.
But they thought I had an unfair advantage. So it was fine. So they put the cameras away and decided to be a doctor.
So camera rankings.
Yeah, right.
They wanted camera rankings.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
It started there.
That's where it began.
No.
So at what point do you start kind of becoming part of the circuit? Because like the Rick
Well,
Mears one is
84,
what
that was the deal. And that was a good, that's kind of a story. It's in Alvy's book, but I was on call. It was one of my weekend call things. It was a Friday morning. We were making rounds, and I get this phone call from Alvy. He says, here's the deal. He tells me all about Mears. He says, we need you to come up here. And I said, you don't understand. I'm on call. I can't leave. And he goes, here, would you like to tell Mr. Penske that?
Right.
And I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea.
Please don't.
I said, I don't think I need to talk to Mr. Penske.
Right.
And so I called my senior most partner, and I said, here's what's going down. And he knows all these guys. And I said, well, could you cover for me tonight while I go? He goes, I'll cover for you, but I have an 8 o'clock tea time tomorrow morning. He said, so you got to be back by 8 o'clock.
Right.
I'm thinking, I'm going to fly to Canada.
Yeah. And just to set this up, Mears, this is 84. Mears had a massive crash at a track that's not even around anymore.
Sanair.
It was like a 7/8 mile oval.
Yeah,
and a
little
course.
bull ring.
Yeah.
19-second laps back then.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Right.
And they were going to amputate both his feet.
Yeah.
And I said, don't amputate anything. Just I'll be there. So I fly up there, and Penske comes and gets me. So we're talking quick transit. Go straight to the hospital. They were expecting my arrival and looked at it and said, we don't need to amputate these. Certainly don't need to amputate these tonight. Let's get them back to the States and take care of them. And I said, okay, now I got to go.
This guy's got a tea time.
I got to be back. So I'm on Dr. Alvy's there, and I'm on my way out to go do this. And he wants to know what's going on. And two things. I'm supposed to call this number and let him know that everything went okay. And it's like 4 a.m. now. Call this guy and let him know that everything's okay. And then I told Alvy, I said, I know this nurse back in Indy that would be perfect for being the transport person. And if we'll just swap. When I get back in the plane, she'll meet me at the airport and go. I said, he said, oh, I can call her. I'll take care of it.
Okay.
So I'm, okay, fine. And I get ready to go, and I got to call this guy. So I go to a phone booth, put my name on the phone, and call this number, and we get this guy that obviously I woke up. And I'm thinking, okay. And I tell him who it is, and he identifies himself. He's the Prime Minister of Quebec province.
Wow.
And I'm like, I said, I'm so sorry. I must have gotten the wrong number. And he said, well, is this Dr. Trammell? And I said, yes, sir, it is. And he goes, no, I wanted to be sure that everything went according to plan and you're fine with everything.
Wow.
And I said, yes, sir, everything's fine.
Yeah.
The people, I was well received, no problems. Give everybody my congratulations for their efficiencies, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I get back home and I'm like, did this just really happen? Did I just really talk to the Prime Minister?
Right. Flew on a private plane for Penske to and fro.
Well, I guess he and Roger were tight. And he wanted to know what everything came down. Because you don't just walk into somebody's hospital without a license and be ready to operate and all this kind of stuff. So they pulled all the strings and it worked fine. I used to carry his x-rays with me before we had all the electronic gadgets.
Sure.
Because I was scared that he'd have another crash, and you'd have to have the old X-rays to figure out what just broke.
Yeah. Oh, right.
And that's what happened the year that he won the.
I never
the third
thought about
one.
that.
Yeah, right.
You got to
Yeah.
track the.
He broke a bone in his foot, and the only way he could drive was to put his other foot on top of it.
Right.
So that's why he didn't slow down.
Just their feet on it.
He
Right.
just had to keep his
Mash on it.
left foot on the right foot to keep going, and you
Wow.
can't use a brake that way. So
Yeah. And then
use a
how was
brake.
that?
A common thing I've read about you with all these drivers and people you had to work with was that if it's not going well, you take it really personal.
Oh, very.
Like it's very personal.
Yeah.
And one of the quotes I read was that when you didn't know how Rick was going to fare, you went home and took it out on your kitchen.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't hurt anything in the kitchen because I don't break things because I'm a tightwad. I don't have to pay to
Yeah,
get
that's expensive.
the idea, I've been tempted to do things like that,
Right.
and then I always think about how much it's going to cost to fix it.
Right,
So I don't.
Yeah.
But I sat at the kitchen counter on a stool most of the rest of the night until the sun came up, so that I could go back and look at his feet because I was afraid they weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anything else to do except
Sure.
wait.
Yeah.
And so I
It's the
sat
worst.
there in the kitchen all night, and
Yeah.
I don't even think I didn't drink, and I didn't drink coffee that much then. So I don't know what I drank, but
Yeah.
it wasn't
Pure
either of the
adrenaline.
above. Yeah,
Yeah.
adrenaline, I guess.
Yeah. Does the personal side of this come from just the way you are as a human being, or is it because you grew up near here? The speedway is what it is. The risk that's so high. These guys are heroes. I refer to IndyCar drivers on ovals as modern day gladiators because it's incredible.
But I think that's just a patient thing.
Yeah.
Is I have a lot of patients who became close friends.
Right.
And you get invested in their well-being,
Sure.
and you do things. I always colored outside the lines. Okay, since I really did that as a kid, and I probably nowadays would be ADD, but I got really emotionally invested in my patients.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially with the drivers, and it's gotten worse as I've gotten older because guys living with us. I used to laugh and say, you knew that you'd had way too many crashes when you showed up at my house, and you knew where the towels were, you knew where the room was,
Right.
you knew where the water
I'll
was.
just take my old room.
Yeah, your old room, your bottle of water, your towels, your favorite bathrobe,
Right.
all this stuff.
Yeah, because we've read that a lot of drivers have stayed with you
Yeah.
in the recovery period. It's what you think to be the best way to get them with a quick recovery. We learned that Takuma Sato has been living with Steve, his manager, and his family for the last 8 years without getting his own place.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like last night
Yeah.
came to dinner with us. He's right
The
there
Indy
with him.
500 winner is just a freeloading son of a bitch.
Yeah, right. For 8 years
Yeah.
straight and
Yeah.
doesn't pay rent. So,
cool.
yeah.
He's got a good deal.
Was there any driver that was in the recovery process that you're like, no, now you have to leave? Like, now it's time to go, kiddo.
I don't want to mention names, but yeah, there was
We'll
one.
bleep it. We'll bleep the name.
Okay. I've only had one driver that
Or can we can guess, and we'll bleep our guesses.
We'll bleep
Okay.
no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah.
couldn't. He had to depart,
Right.
and it was,
Oh, okay.
he just was incorrigible. I mean,
Right.
that was at the height of his aberrances, and it'd
sure.
be like, you can't in the house.
Fair enough.
You can go out in the barn,
Yeah,
but you
right.
can't.
Right.
And you can't go to the barn because you can't walk on your, you have to use your crutches.
Right.
And we had when were you fully recovered? When would you go back to racing? And the joke was when you could beat my wife in a go-kart, you were good to go.
Right.
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 Not to mention that she was the world champion in an enduro kart at
Karting.
Daytona.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the guys knew that. If they didn't, they figured it out real quick. He's the only one that gamed the system.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
He picked the place in the carts and had them.
Smart.
Ah,
yeah.
yeah.
Her
especially-
cart
yeah.
was wound
Hey.
down. She goes out and does a lap, comes back in, she says,
This is nonsense.
Not
We're
fair.
not doing
This
this.
isn't fair. Yeah. So that's a driver's job, is put yourself in the best
Yeah.
opportunity to win.
"Oh,
Yeah.
of course."
He's doing
of
his
course.
job.
Yeah. All right. He was doing his job. But anyway, that was.
Right.
So you were kind of part of that first real full-time safety team that the series had
Yeah.
then. And, I mean, even today, we may be involved in some series that don't do that still.
Right.
Does it drive you insane?
Well,
that a lot of
especially
series
the
still don't
ones
embrace
that
it?
have the money to do it.
Hey,
Yeah.
Like
there
it
we
would be. Yeah. The one in particular that by God, if they decided that was what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
I mean,
because what are the advantages? I assume like the X-ray thing is a perfect example that you know exactly. Oh no, that was from 3 crashes ago. And right.
And that one bothers me.
The lack of a full-time safety team.
Yeah.
For some
the
other
European series.
Yeah.
Because that one money-wise, and then I don't understand the thought process for why the U.S.-based one doesn't have.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the part that in order to make that work, to have a full-time safety team, the guys have got to have real jobs.
Right.
Okay, you have to have your hands in the gook and doing it every day, and that would require a lot of people because nobody can do 60 or however many events the big cars do. We were fortunate, 18 events. I think the most I ever had to do in a year was 24, and that included testing.
Yeah.
Because
you're literally double dipping. You're doing
I still came
IndyCar,
back
kart,
to
whatever it was, and coming back to Ortho Indy and doing your day job.
And that's my partners. That was the joke, is they knew when I was in town because my suitcase was in front of my office door, because my secretary did my uniforms. She'd take them home, do my laundry because she knew I wasn't going home till I had to leave again. And that's a very small number compared to like NASCAR's.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd have to have a big safety team.
Right.
And you don't want people that aren't actively engaged or have so much experience that they're still active. But
so in other words, that would encourage maybe less experienced people, or people just burn out too quick.
Well, you get old. You know, you have to be current.
So Rhonda's your wife.
Yes.
And she used to race.
Yeah, my wife is good. She's technically very good, and she has the wherewithal to do it well. She was one of the original PPG girls that drove the for IndyCar for kart.
Oh, for the
kart back in the day, and then
because basically they had a fleet of female drivers doing sort of a lot of the thrill rides,
precision
so to speak.
drive stuff. And she at the same time was racing go-karts. Then we went from go-karts to Barber Saab, Barber Dodge, to Indy, tested for Indy lights, and then the checkbook didn't have enough
that tends to
room
happen.
for the zeros in it,
So she was the real deal, though.
But that was a real fun thing because I remember we were Mid-Ohio one year, and she was running Barber Dodge then, and I was timing and so on and so forth, and I'm sitting on the pit wall. She didn't come back. A lap goes by.
And are you guys together at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not married. We're just
right. You just sort of hanging.
So we're not no timing and so on and so forth. And the announcer goes, "That's okay, Dr. Trammell." She says she's fine, but she kind of damaged the car. And after that, I had a $1,000 ashtray on my thing. It was the cast aluminum cap from where the rear wing went on the transmission.
Okay, yeah.
And that's what she scrubbed off. Didn't hurt the car much. But I was probably one of the most favorite people that Barber Dodge ever had. I wouldn't pay for anything unless I got it.
I got to keep it.
I have pretty much enough parts to build the body to a Barber Dodge car.
Right. Nice. That's excellent.
I said, you're not going to sell this to somebody else as a rehabbed part.
Yeah,
right.
Keeping this. Yeah. Right.
Paying for it.
And there were times that were giggles. There's a great piece on ESPN. We were racing in Vancouver, and on the lead lap, a car must have, I don't know if it blew an oil line or it got hit. I never did figure out why the fire, but there was, like out of a movie fire, just a wall of oil fire and so on and so forth. And so when we got around to the scene, there are all these cars are stacked up and so on and so forth, and I'm looking, and she's not there, so I'm like, okay, that's good, because the radio wasn't working or whatever. So I go up to this car, and I go to pull the nose of a car out of the back end of the car, and I look up, and it's her nose cover, their shock cover, their number on it, and I go, oh. And ESPN.
Right. Oh, man.
And I knew she was okay, so that wasn't a big problem.
Right,
but it was like, this is going to be really expensive. So, anyway, that was that kind of stuff.
How'd you guys meet?
How'd you meet her?
On the racetrack.
Okay. In a crash?
No, actually, I was. We were getting ready to start a race at Mid-Ohio, and she
Yeah.
was driving the pace car. And one of the girls came up and said, "There's one of our girls has had a crash recently and has a problem. And could you take a look at her?" So she kind of shyly wandered over to the car. So I started taking a look at her, and somebody else that was more aggressive came up and wanted me to look at something they had, so she wandered off. And the girl that was making this happen said, "Well, could I have her call you?" And I said, "Well, I'll give you my nurse's card and have her call." So she comes, and I ended up operating on her wrists and her ankle, and that's kind of a cute story because that was in the days I was doing 15, 16-hour days for surgery, and everything was running late. And she was the last one on the schedule. When we got finished with it, I realized that everybody had left except the recovery room. I had no way she was an outpatient. And I was like, "Oh, what are we going to do with you?" Sending a cab back to the hotel. So I said, "Well, I have to go right past the Speedway on the way home, so I'll take you back to your room." And
Right.
she gets in my car, and I had a Porsche. I had Danny
Yeah,
Sullivan's
you
Porsche.
did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she gets in the car, and
Convenient.
she's like not impressed. I said, "Look, the only rule is you can't throw up in my car."
That's our rule. That's
I
our
said-
rule.
Yeah, I said, "You can't throw up in my car." So I'm on my way to the track, and I think, "Oh, this is not good." I said, "My luck, Robin Miller's going to come staggering out of the bar drunk. He's going to see me putting this girl in a hotel room." And I said, "This is going to go really bad." So that was 92.
Yeah.
And Jeff Andretti is resident in the Turn 2 Suites because he's getting over his being beat up. And I called Jessica, and I said, "Look, don't ask me any questions because I'm almost there. You need to go to room such and such and just stand outside the room. I'll be there in less than 10 minutes, and you'll see why I need you and become apparent." So I pull, and she's like, Jessica's got 8,000 questions. I said, "No, you don't understand. Do it. Just do it for me." So she's standing there, and I pull up in the car, and I said, "Here's the deal. I've got a patient who's an attractive young lady who's still kind of drugged up and needs to be tucked into her bed." And I said, "I really can't do that myself.
Yeah, right.
So can you help me out?"
Right.
So she did, and everything went fine. My nurse took care of it. I actually never saw her again until like 2 years later, and at that point I'm divorced, and she brings these crutches back to the medical center that she'd had for 2 years.
2 years?
Like
Right.
we needed them.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got to bring
And,
those back.
Yeah, right.
So she comes back and drops these things off, and I was having a brain fade, I guess. And I just said, "Would you like to have dinner tonight?" "Oh, yeah, sure." And I'm all the way back to the hotel. I'm thinking, what did I just do?
Here. Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Smooth.
Yeah.
So
Alright.
the Porsche didn't work.
she
was-
doesn't like Porsches.
It was your work.
Yeah, I guess the
Right.
work worked.
Yeah.
She was not a great patient, but what can I say? So anyway, yeah, it worked. Everything worked out fine.
Yeah.
So the coat is far more powerful.
Yeah, she liked the NSX way better than the Porsche. She didn't.
Oh, boom. There we
My
go.
guy right there.
There we
We're just
go.
Shaking hands,
Okay.
like gentlemen. Yeah.
My,
Yep.
my NSX had 3 numbers for the VIN number. It was one of the first ones made.
Nice.
And
Okay.
it's-
What, do you still have it?
No.
Now, are you still on the full-time IndyCar schedule?
I go to all the ovals,
Okay.
and then I don't have to go to the road courses, but I have to be available to pick up the
You're sort of
phone.
available to
Yeah.
And I actually monitor them. I have a really cute photograph. I can't remember where they were racing, so it was in the spring, and it'll become apparent. The girl that we all work in a row when I'm there. The girl that sits next to me sends me a text and wants to know if I'm basically suited up and ready for the race. And so I sent her a picture back and says, all these monitors, two or three computer monitors and blah, 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 and a big screen TV. And I said, see if you can tell me what's wrong with this picture. And I sent it to her, and she's looking at it. Finally, they give up, and they call back and say, now you got the race, you got timing and scoring, you got the truck cameras and all this stuff. I said, what's wrong with this picture? I said, the big screen's got the Masters on it.
Right. Yeah. 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 The important stuff.
Yeah,
As it should be.
so-
Right.
So just to kind of go through a who's who of names here, you've worked on mirrors, as we talked about,
Yeah.
Foyt, a bunch of Andretti's, PK.
Right.
Shirley Muldowney, for crying out loud.
Shirley.
Are there, we have a lot of questions about this,
Yeah.
but are there any that particularly stick out?
In what regard?
Well, Mears, because he was the first.
Okay.
The first real let's don't amputate his feet kind of thing. And Piquet stands out because he was the most mischievous, and he did a really cool thing.
Yeah, because we haven't really had too many PK stories, but
Piquet,
I was heard he was not afraid to pull pranks. Just be a son of a bitch. Yeah.
One of the highlights of my career was when Piquet was still. He and Jeff Andretti stayed here in town, and they were in.
And just to set the stage, Nelson Piquet was like one of the big F1 names of the 80s. You know, bunch of world championships. Comes out to try the Indy 500 in '92, and this was when they were doing stupid fast speeds. The circuit was a little different, and he basically he just lost the rear end or something went out.
Well, what happened is it went yellow when he was on a hot lap, and he was pissed, and he let out of the throttle coming out of the fourth turn. He just lifted, and that was
all
not,
it took.
That card, all it took.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's lots and lots of Piquet stories.
What's your best one?
Well, the one that got me is I'd stop every night. I'd go in the morning and I'd make rounds with he and Jeff, and then I'd go to work. And when I was coming home, I drove by, so I'd stop and be sure they were okay. Well, he always had something he wanted to show me, and this, that, or the other. And he was showing me this new McLaren where the 3-seat thing where the
F1
pilot sits in the middle and the passengers sit behind him on the sides. And he's like, well, how'd you like to have one of those? I said, I'd really rather have a Ferrari. He said, I have this thing for the Testarossa, so I'd really like to have one. And so a few weeks later, I get this big thing in the mail from Sheldon Ferrari, Ferrari in Chicago. Yep. And it's a letter. It says, per Ginalisi, who was the driver then, we've arranged to acquire a new Testarossa, da-da-da-da-da. How would you like it delivered? Would you want to come get it, or shall we deliver it? I'm like, I looked at my nurse and I said, oh, my God, Nelson bought me a Ferrari. This is unbelievable.
Right.
And then the bill fell out. and I'm looking at this thing and I'm thinking, I panicked. It's like, I
saved you.
Yeah, I don't have enough money. I could sell the house and I couldn't buy this car. So, and not being a very, I couldn't make money with a printing press. So I look at this thing and I'm thinking, oh, God, I got to call these people up and tell them I can't do this car.
Right.
In retrospect, all I had to do is tell them to deliver it and then sell it to the, put it on the market the next day for twice what I paid for it. Sure. But I wasn't that smart. All I could see is, how am I going to float this deal? So I called them and I said, they were delighted because they, of course, took delivery and sold it to some other idiot.
Right, yeah.
Probably paid 3 times what I was going to pay for it.
Sure.
But I went to Nelson and I said, I got the thing about the car today. And he gets this grin. And he goes, it's really nice. He says, you can thank me now. And I said, yeah, well, I can't afford it. And he goes, I know that. he's just fooling with me. And we've kept in touch. And so on and so forth.
So we have a sports car buddy, Joey Hand.
I know Joey.
So Joey Hand in sports car has a mega crash in mid-Ohio, multiple rolls, fuel all over him. So the solution, which was not a traveling safety team, was to strip him down and hose him down with water because they didn't want to get fuel. So he's sitting there on a gurney in public view.
Freezing.
And as he liked to say, naked, the water was cold.
I believe he referred to himself as a frightened turtle.
Frightened turtle was the term.
It was a big hit with the fans on that episode.
You're seeing all of these drivers at their most vulnerable. But they're still racing drivers who by nature are vain. Of course, except Ryan.
Yeah, thanks.
Did anyone ever, because you see these guys and you travel with them, did anybody ever get caught up in that kind of thing? Or were they all just okay with that?
I mean, vanity-wise, let me see. Probably the worst faux pas that I've ever done is Danny Sullivan and Lynn St. James crashed at Michigan, okay? And Danny was hurt, and we flew him off, and I went with him and so on and so forth. We left Lynn St. James sitting on the wall. And so that was number one screw up.
Yeah.
And I know Lynn really well. She's a sweetheart.
She actually told us to get you on the show.
Did she?
Yeah. We interviewed her last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then she probably also told you that I left her sitting at the gate outside my house.
She did not. No, she's a nice lady.
I invited her over for dinner and neglected to tell my wife that she was coming for dinner. Forgot to put it on the calendar that she was coming for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, when the gate's closed, it's closed.
Yeah.
There's no phone, there's no call box, no whatever.
Oh.
And Lynn sat there for a while and thought, well, how am I going to make this work? And she finally gave up and went away.
Right.
And put it in her book, of course. And I was like, I can't believe.
Wait,
so anytime I've ever asked her out to dinner since then, it's like she'll go, well, how long should I wait?
Right.
Wait, were you not reminded until the book came out? Or did she
she
see you
never
the next
said
day?
a word about it until the book came out.
That's
like,
evil. That's evil. Like, oh, I'll get you back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and of course, I read the book when it came out, and I was like, oh, It was kind of cool.
Do people give thank you gifts?
Do people what?
Give thank you gifts?
Actually, the things I always ask them for that it's kind of self-perpetuating is if they have to reside in the basement, they have to add to the wall.
Oh, okay.
And so they have to leave something. So there's
what's on? So if I were to go in, what is the wall right now?
Well, there are lots of pictures
Okay.
that are signed. There are several helmets.
Okay.
There are braces.
Okay.
Alex
wow.
Zanardi's balaclava from
cool.
the racetrack is
Okay.
is there with a little
with his
sign
name.
it.
Yeah, sure.
So there's all kinds of cool stuff.
You ever find yourself not getting along with any of these guys? Like, I mean, because I know a lot of people don't want to be injured. People don't like hospitals. They don't like things like that. Has there been somebody along the way that you, like, just because of circumstance, you're like, God, this guy's a pain in my ass because he won't just listen to me? Because everybody knows, like, especially race car drivers, they all know better. And I know a lot of people that argue with doctors. Andy Lally.
Yeah. Code.
Yeah, right. Has there been drivers in your past, like, literally their legs are in your hands, and they're like, no, I need this or that, or like, I know better? Is that a thing
Who
at your
would
level?
you think of right off the top of your head?
That's smarter than you.
That's more demanding.
I was going to say Ganassi.
Yeah, but thinking that's
You
be the
didn't do
first
it,
guy I
though.
would go to.
Right.
He's minor league compared to who I'm thinking
Oh,
of.
wow.
AJ.
Oh, yeah,
God.
duh.
Yeah, right? Yeah, just him.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
AJ
I
Foyt.
can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now, was that
yeah.
he's smarter than a doctor, or just ain't no doctor gonna tell him
Well, it
what to
started
do?
in the race car with his feet augured into the dirt.
Right.
Right.
Road America or something?
Yeah, we were in Elkhart Lake.
Yep.
And
And that car, for those who go to the museum, was on display. I don't know if it still
it
is.
is.
And
With
it
the
is
front end still.
crazy to see
yeah.
the front end of a car like that mangled the way
Yeah.
it is. Like, it shows what it did.
Oh, yeah, he pointed that out to me. We had a thing last year, and
Yeah.
I walked in, and he spoke so it was apparent who he was talking to. Anyway, when we got to the car, after running through a wall of fire, a few little things like that, got to the car, and he's trying to get out, and we're trying to tell him that we need to do some things to get him out. And he's like, I got this. I can get out. And he's mad. Everybody get out of the way.
And, like, the front half of his car is gone.
Yeah,
basically.
he's like into the dirt
Yeah.
so far. So I said to the people that were working, I said, everybody stand back. Mr. Foyt's going to get himself out of the car. And so,
this is like seconds after. There's like fire everywhere.
right.
And you're like calmly like, no, let's with this guy.
yeah, Mr. Foyt's going to get himself out of the car.
Okay.
So he starts up and screams about passes out. And says, just hit me in the head with a hammer. And I said, how about we do this my way? And that was the beginning of our relationship. And it was that kind of dialogue that went on for 2 years.
Yeah.
He would come to the office and we'd do our thing, and I'd tell him what I thought, what level of activity he could be, and he'd call me from the bulldozer or the,
Right. So this
to
was
let me know that things were going a lot better than I thought they were going to go.
Of course,
So.
because he's smarter than you.
Because he knows.
Yeah, because that was Road America 1990. And
Back in the day.
okay, and then and how long was the recovery for him?
He was on the front row the next year.
Wow.
That was in September and May. He was on the front row.
Right.
Were you on site at Fontana when Greg Moore had his crash?
Yeah.
Did you know Greg well at all?
I'm kind of responsible for that. He had broken his hand, and I did one of those. I really don't think I'm going to be able to drive. And he and his father asked, what do you have to do? What's got to happen to make this happen?
Because basically he'd been in a scooter accident.
Yeah, I think he got hit by a car on a scooter.
Yeah, right.
And so I said, I can try to manipulate things back into place, but they'd have to be absolutely perfect to be able to drive, and then we'd have to make something to maintain that would still allow you to grip the steering wheel. And I said, I just don't think we have the resources here. So they said, well, do the best you can. Do what you can. And I did, and it worked unbelievably well. And we were able to put all the stuff together and make it happen. And what the result was. That was a real personal deal. I spent a long time, because I was the one that brought him in the ambulance.
So you were first on
from
site.
the track.
So
yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't the first on site, but I was the senior most person on track.
Right. Okay.
So I brought him in and to the helicopter and so on and so forth. And it was like really there were a couple of drivers that were really mad at me for letting them drive.
Right.
They held me responsible for.
Well, because people made the claim that with the hand injury, maybe that played a role in his ability to counter steer or something like that. And do you believe?
Went through that PI data, line by line by line. He drove that car all the way into the wall.
Yeah.
So it wasn't anything to do with his hand.
Right.
And the reality is that if I know me, I raced with a concussion once by lying.
Yeah.
To the medical staff I saw earlier that day when I had a crash in another class and said, no, I'm fine, everything's fine. And then I raced later that day, and I knew I wasn't, but I was going to race because I tried to.
But we actually tested him with, he had a private test.
Yeah, he got a few laps at the end of the day, right?
To prove that he was up to speed, that we looked at all the steering trays, everything you could think to look up to say that he was okay to go.
Yeah. But
now,
if you had said, let's just say if you didn't have a say in it, and he could have just done it, he probably would have found a way, I imagine.
Yeah.
He's a race car driver.
Well, who was the Allison that got killed in the helicopter crash?
Davey.
I looked at X-rays of his hand when he got hurt.
Yeah.
They just duct taped it to the steering wheel.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, science.
In the case of somebody like Greg's accident, which was pretty rough, are there accidents? I know you say never give up. Are there accidents where, like, this is a gruesome one, but I think of like Gonzalo Rodriguez. Are there accidents where you show up on site of it, or you're in the scene, and you just kind of know that there's nothing you can do?
Yeah, his was one of those.
Rodriguez.
I knew because the car was upside down.
This is Rodriguez.
I was the first one there.
Yeah.
Like a dog going under the car.
Yeah.
And I mean, intellectually, you know what's wrong.
Yeah.
And that it's not survivable.
Right.
But there's still that side of you that says, hey,
we can do something.
There are things we got to do here. And you start doing that, and then some part of you clicks off and goes, this is futile.
Right.
And you're making a big scene out of whatever.
Right.
And that was probably the most graphic one, because I still can close my eyes and see that like I went under the car.
Yeah. Well, I was there, and I remember everybody. I mean, I'm a fan, but I remember everybody working under a tarp.
Yeah, because it was.
I can only imagine. So, I assume it was rough.
I had about 2 quarts of blood all over me by the time I got out front of the car, and they wrapped me up in a sheet and sent me home.
Yeah.
So, in the back of the med center.
We don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about, but are there any where you? I know giving up isn't really the right word, but are there any where you showed up thinking, I don't think we can do much, and it actually did turn around?
No, because by nature it's a fix-it mentality.
Yeah, right.
The things that happened with Zanardi were your mind plays tricks on you. You get up and there was a bucket of blood.
Yeah, I mean, to set the Zanardi story, Lausitz Ring 2001, I mean, just a week after everything going on 9/11.
September 15th.
Zanardi spins coming out of a pit lane onto the track, full tilt. Tagliani goes through his car. Parts of Zanardi go with it.
Right.
And so when you guys arrive on the site, the story, as I'm told, is that You guys were literally slipping not in oil, but in
Yeah, I thought
blood.
it was oil.
Right.
I mean, I didn't know until I got there that I wasn't. I fell down a couple of times going up the track. I was sliding, not fell, but
Yeah, we were
down on my
slipping,
knees.
right.
And I get up there, and then I realize there are no legs. And stupidly, I turned to the safety guy next to me and said, "Where are his legs?" So they went and got him. Not them, which that's another story. But then it turns into survival.
Yeah.
And how quickly can we do what we need to do? And the real story, it just wasn't his day to die.
Yeah.
Because that's a non-survivable. The military's got books about that because you don't survive, and that's part of their triage. That's a non-recoverable injury.
Right.
The funny story about that is he was in an induced coma for a while,
Yeah.
and so I didn't see him conscious after the thing happened for really several months, but. The story is two parts to the story. The first part is when he came to, his wife was real concerned about how they were going to tell him that he didn't have any legs.
Right.
And she said he kind of woke up wide awake right off the bat. Looked up, he's covered with a sheet. He lifts the sheet up and he looks down and he goes, "Oh, thank God I still have the middle one." He did. He knew. I mean, he knew from that they were gone. And
I still have the middle one.
yeah, so
Still Zanardi.
that was for
Still a
that.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got home to Indy, and I mean, his whole deal was always emotional, and it's just because he's Italian and I'm Italian, and so anyway, the phone's ringing in our house, and we were literally just coming in the house, getting back from Europe, and I pick up the phone and say hello, and there's this pause, and it says something kind of half Italian, half English, and I'm like, "Who is this?" And the voice of the goes, "Alex." I said, "Alex who?" And he's like indignant, "Zanardi." I said, "No, you're in a coma."
Nope.
This is all a
And
dream.
he goes, "No," I says, "I'm not in a coma anymore." And I said, "So I'm not. I don't know what to say." And he goes, "What size shoes do you wear?" And I thought for a minute, and he goes, "I have lots of shoes." And he knew I have small feet and I like Italian shoes. And I said, "No, you don't understand. You're going to need those." He goes, "I have no feet." I said, "Doesn't matter. You're going to have a place to put your shoes, so don't give them away."
Yeah.
And so the first time I see him is in Toronto 6 months later. And he goes through this thing. He manages to haul himself up on the podium and down. And we're sitting at one of those little cocktail tables. And he comes over and sits down. And there's no room. The table's completely covered with drinks and stuff. And so he's sitting there, and he's got his glasses. There's no place to put his glass down. So he reaches down. He grabs one leg, and he pulls it up so that the sole of his foot's pointing at the ceiling, and puts his drink on it. And he says, "I always have a drink holder."
We're good to go.
Yeah, right.
We talk about safer barriers and Hans devices being some of the biggest things. How has analysis tools changed the game for you guys?
Well, they're huge because you deal with facts instead of.
Right. Well, like, what do you guys do? I don't know. So an accident. So like Bourdais has his accident. What?
All right. The first.
Reconstructing. What do you do?
Okay. First of all, we've got all the video, so you can actually watch the car do it. Okay. It has a crash recorder that records the chassis Gs in 3 axis. If the zero accelerometers work, you get head Gs. You can do all the, how much the car weighs with the fuel and the driver. The PI data tells you how fast it was going. So you can do all the math for energy input, direction, so on and so forth. And look at things analytically, what systems, and be very careful because the lawyers jump on me all the time about this, what systems failed. And failure is an engineering term, not a design term. It's when something's stressed to the point where it no longer functions, it fails.
Right.
And so we look for the failure mode and how the loads were applied, what happened that made it do that, and then the two of us work together. I start on the inside and say, okay, in order to have these injuries, this amount of force had to be applied to this point
of the body,
to produce this. And then I can do the math, kind of. I'm not a stellar mathematician, but I could stumble through it. Jeff starts on the other side, and he says, okay, we got speed, we know the velocity, we know the mass, the frictions, and so on and so forth, and he can work it back the other way and say, okay, this is how much energy was input into the system. So the system absorbed this amount of energy because what was left is what broke them.
Right.
And usually it's amazing how the numbers balance
line
out.
up. And I assume every accident's incredibly different, but from a procedural standpoint, like, is it literally just you two? Is there a group of people behind you guys?
Well, there
that are doing
are
this?
people that help collect the data. I mean,
Right.
they go out and photograph all the car parts and measure stuff and so on and so forth. We have a team of that's what I do at a racetrack is do that. When I'm not there, I just drive everybody crazy because I keep asking for this picture and that picture, and I'm very impatient.
Right, sure.
And,
You're like, I used to take photographs.
Yeah.
I know how this
do
works.
this.
Yeah.
What is the deal?
no,
Back in my day, we didn't have digital cameras.
Being an impartial observer, how hard are teams to get data out of?
you mean how hard is it to get the data?
Yeah, like if you're trying to get a pie tracing off of Bourdais.
Oh, the teams help us.
They're no-
I mean,
they're no
everybody.
problems.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
they're
On
board.
They are. Way back in the beginning, I'd have to go beg, and sometimes they get cranky, and it depends. But now they're a integral part of the help.
Yeah.
Right.
Like when Franchitti got hurt, I went out to their shop, and they laid out all the parts for me, so
Okay.
because I knew we were looking at what broke his leg.
Yeah.
And I knew what I was looking for, and I just go and I tell them, okay, this is what happened mechanically to his leg, how that happened in the car. And they know these things inside and out, so they're able to walk me through the stuff. And especially the guys at Ganassi, Barry Wanzer and company has been unbelievable about tolerating my stupidity. And I go in and
Right.
I'm banging on, what's this? What does it do? And
Right.
so on and so forth, because I really don't know anything about cars.
Sure.
And they have taught me a ton, and very patiently over the years. And the door is always open. I mean, I can just knock them.
Everybody hates the word spec, but in your case, we have a very heavily homologated car where most people are running X percentage of the components are identical. Does that help you? Just because everybody's running the same stuff, so the physics should all apply equally?
Well, because if we test something,
Right.
and it's the same across the board.
Yeah.
And so, I think especially safety things aren't open to, they don't make a car go faster or slower.
Right. And everybody
should
has
have
the same.
one.
Right. So coming from the PR side that I come from, this is more for like fans because it's something I'm fairly familiar with, and I know Ryan is too. You mentioned HIPAA earlier. I don't know that fans necessarily know what HIPAA is, and like, so in the modern era, when an accident happens, there are legally things that just can't be discussed or things that can't be disclosed. What is HIPAA?
The HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Privacy and Portability Act.
Yeah.
And it was started to protect people who had AIDS from disclosing so they could get insurance if they changed jobs or whatever. And it has evolved into this huge industry of don't look, don't tell.
Okay.
And some of it is utterly ridiculous to the point, probably that somebody will show up at my door tomorrow and say that.
You mentioned it. How dare you?
Right.
They're like whole industries that have grown to tell you what you have to do to protect yourself against a HIPAA violation.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, it's the privacy of your medical information.
Right.
But actually, the first things our drivers do is sign away their HIPAA rights.
Oh, okay.
Well, they actually, when they offer it to us, they always say you don't have to. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That-
you don't have to unless you want us to take care of you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the beauty of a full-time safety team.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because so
It makes sense on their side.
So
That-
waivers aside, the basic idea is the second they show up at a hospital, in theory, there's a million approvals that have to go up before you can update anybody on any condition.
Exactly.
So when there's silence on an injury, it's not necessarily a PR department that's lacking. It's that there's 800 legal systems they have to go through before we can say anything, even if it's minor.
That plus the fact that sometimes somebody gets hurt and they're the person, mother, father, wife, that they want to know that is not findable.
Right.
Right.
And so
Is that a
you
legal
don't
thing
want
or an
them to
ethical thing?
See it on the 6 o'clock news.
Right.
Right.
So if we'll keep some names out of this because I think we all know the same. But if a driver has a traumatic injury that we pretty much know is over, but it's media silence, a lot of times it's you staying quiet is more for the sake of the family involved to make sure they get their process in place before.
Yeah, that's the big thing. And then it's a catch-22 with the drivers. They want to know what's going on. If a fellow driver's injured and it's bad, they want to know. They want to know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they're the one that's injured, they don't want the public to know.
Right.
Well, as soon as you tell a second person, the public knows.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Has social media changed the game for you in a bad way? Has social media changed? Like now it's a tweet away, reckless Facebook post.
Or even a fan.
It has a little bit because the drivers.
That's what I'm saying. Like
drivers
sometimes tweet when they shouldn't.
Can we start a Twitter account for you?
No. Anyway,
Figured that
Smart
out.
answer. Smart answer. Thank you.
Because it was the real laugh was part of this job that I do. If somebody is in a crash and there's a risk of injury, or I think they might have one, I follow up with them. Well, I figured out within the first few weeks that I was doing that job, I can't call them on the phone. They won't answer the phone. But I learned that if you send them a text message, I get an immediate reply.
Yeah.
And there was a really cute story about that. Hinchcliffe got cold-cocked at the first Angie's List Grand Prix.
Right.
And so I thought, well, I knew he was concussed. He went to the hospital, and I knew they released him. But I thought, okay, let's just find out what they told him.
Yeah.
So I texted him. He responded, but the text was, if you're reading this, you obviously didn't get the instructions. So immediately my phone rings. And he goes, what instructions? I said, the one that says you're not supposed to use anything electronic, like the computer or your cell phone.
Right.
He goes, no. He said, they gave me some papers. I said, did you read them? He says, no, I have a hard time focusing. I can't read. I said, that's kind of what I thought. So I'm going to tell you 3 things, and you do it, and then we'll talk tomorrow.
Right.
It's like, turn the TV off, turn the phone off, turn the computer off, and go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then call me in the morning.
That's awesome.
But, they'll if I could tweet, I could do that, but I have no idea what happens when you tweet.
Just don't.
Yeah. You're
I'm sure that would be a real HIPAA no.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hey, at James Hinchcliffe, you good? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
So,
Frowny
no,
face
I don't do that.
emoji.
Yeah, emoji, right.
Band-Aid emoji.
Right. So anyway.
So Dinner with Racers, not a political show, more of like get to know you, but we're getting a little edgier as we're getting a bigger following, and so we kind of want to talk some politics with you. Last presidential election, you voted?
Johnny Rock Page.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Wow.
That's the thing.
He's a big deal.
I don't know how he didn't win.
Yeah.
Dr. Steve Olvey.
Right.
You've known the guy 35 years. Did you have any idea when you first came across him that you two would go on to become a partnership that would do so much for the sport?
Not at all.
Yeah.
The trigger was the Mears thing,
Yeah.
and it started from there and just kept going.
Right.
I was just down there last weekend, not this past weekend, but the previous weekend for Adrian Fernandez's wedding.
Oh, yeah.
And
cool.
At the same time that I retired and started playing golf, he decided to start playing golf, although he had played, I guess, as a high school or whatever.
Sure.
So we play together. I go down there often.
Yeah.
And I talked to him on the way here tonight, actually.
Like these two idiots I got to
Yeah, I
go
don't
dinner
know what
with.
this thing
Yeah,
is.
right. Don't do this.
It's
Yeah, right.
apparently not radio.
Yeah. I got tricked into another podcast.
Right.
So you guys have obviously spent a ton of time together.
Right.
Give me a pet peeve that he does, because we spend a lot of time together making this show, and we know all sorts of things we didn't want to know about each other. There's got to be some pet peeves, especially amongst doctors.
Mostly, I mean, we've gotten along. We've done so much so well, and our relationship was worked out really well on the racetrack. When we were kind of divided jobs, so we were both we had fancy titles, but we were both kind of co-directors of the all through the CART years of the medical side of that. And it worked out really well because I don't go to meetings, I don't do budgets, I don't hire and fire.
Yeah.
I'm very apolitical. It's like, you do what you have to do. Whereas he's really good at all that stuff. I'm the nuts and bolts guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it'd be like, well, how much is this going to cost? It's like, I don't care. Just get somebody to pay for it.
Right.
And he would
And he
do
does
that.
that. Right,
And,
right.
So it worked out really, really well.
So
that
I'm
part's
the
good.
I'm the Trammell on this deal. You're definitely Steve Olvey. You have figured out.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
In that
yeah.
sense, I was about to say I'm not the face, but I'm absolutely
Right.
the go and engineer everything and figure out how to make it all work.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can figure out what size screw or what needs to be made out of, all that stuff. But
Yeah.
what it costs.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's okay.
Like,
That's
like
my
Sean-
role. Yeah.
Sean, I talked to him,
All
figured
right.
out. Yeah.
So pet peeve wise is we play a lot of golf together.
Does he drink?
Does he drink? Yeah, vodka.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, he's a real vodka snob. He won't drink anything but Belvedere.
Oh.
And,
okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I decided that I like Tito's.
Yeah.
And it also costs a whole lot less than grape juice. So you get more bang for your buck.
Right.
But the pet peeve is that probably has to do with golf.
Okay.
He keeps he digs a hole for himself because he gets so frustrated when he doesn't play well.
Right.
And especially if it's something he knows he can do but he doesn't do well. And it's like, we really can do anything that a pro can do. We just can't do it on demand.
You're right.
Yeah. I've holed balls out of the sand trap. Right. Could I do it if you asked me to?
Yeah.
Nah.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, on that sort of other doctors in the world thing, this is kind of a convoluted question, but did you ever read And the Band Played On? And the Band Played On the
No, I haven't.
Okay, but you know the subject
Yeah,
matter. So And the Band Played On is a book that turned into a movie about kind of the AIDS epidemic as it burgeoned in the 80s and everything. But there's a particular doctor, Dr. Robert Gallo, that they in the book they don't necessarily paint the most favorable light to, that it was in his best interest to have the data from all these new cases showing up to fall a certain way so that his theory would be more accurate and therefore his direction of research could get funded. You're involved in a number of motorsport initiatives right now. I'm going to do my best here. You're in the FIA Institute for Motorsport Safety and Sustainability.
Yeah, that's
that used to be.
that's a used to
thank
be.
you.
It's
That's what it used to be.
Yeah.
Global Institute.
I got shut down
for
on that too.
Okay.
GIMSS.
Okay.
Yeah.
Global
And the
Institute for Motorsports.
International
Safety.
Council of Motorsport Sciences.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's still that.
That's
I was
like
a founding
it. But with
author of
that, there are doctors from all over the world.
Right.
It's arguably sort of a sexy area of science to be in because it's
Yeah,
motorsport
now it
safety.
is, yeah.
And there's commercial interests. Somebody sells the piece for the helmet. Somebody
Right.
sells that barrier piece, whatever it is. There's profitability.
Exactly.
Being the nuts and bolts, no politics kind of guy, how convoluted is this really?
The real rush to the table right now is obviously people have got something to sell.
Yeah.
Right.
And as long as it's vetted scientifically,
Yeah.
which is to its credit, that's what the GIMSS/FIA does, is creates standards for everything that
Right.
everybody has to meet.
Right.
So there's no partiality to that.
Right. But there could, and I honestly have no idea, but there could always be one doctor that's on the take. I mean, there's a whole group of you that I believe go through
Yeah,
this.
I'm sure they're guys that are connected.
Right.
One of the things now in medicine that you can't speak at anything where people get educational units for it
Okay.
without disclosing
That, by
down,
the way, these.
down to what size underwear you wear and where you
Right.
bought them at.
If something was
Right.
given
And,
to you,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
So we're all pretty straight with that. And I've always done everything based on a fee-for-service model.
Right.
If you ask me to consult for something, you get a bill.
Right.
And I don't want to own part of the company, and
Right.
I especially don't want to have to count widgets and find out what you owe me because
Right.
I just don't
Right.
have the wherewithal to do
So
that.
to that point, because I know you're not like this, canopies obviously and,
Right.
and Halo pieces being a big competition. If all of a sudden you got in the business of making canopies, would you be allowed on these councils, or would you just have to disclose what you do?
I think you just have to disclose what you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question because we're developing the windscreen,
Right.
Yeah.
and I'm sure there's something in my contract that says I could never profit from it.
Right.
But I didn't have the patience to profit for. I'd be on to the next thing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But that
People would ask
Ferrari-
me, why did I retire? Because I could. That's all.
How did you come up with the idea to put accelerometers in earplugs?
Well, the first part started with the accelerometers in the car.
Yeah.
And those were John Melvin had a lot to do with that, but I don't think he was like on the right up front with it. But it all happened at about the same time. It started in '92, and how that happened is '92 was everybody crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Andretti, Piquet, Vassar broke his femur.
Yeah.
Can't
lost
remember
a
how many
driver.
femurs got broken that day. Andretti's toes, Crawford's toes.
Yeah.
Fittipaldi mirrors, it's on and on and on. Anyway, John Melvin calls me up, and we had met somewhere along the line at a meeting, and he goes, we have the facilities to help you, and I had all the data because we kept all the data. And so we met a couple of days after the race, and we started measuring stuff and so on and so forth. And that was what led to the longer nose cones, were some of the data from us, and I started going up to Warren, Michigan to do sled testing and trying to recreate scenes. John comes up and says, that there's a company, it's called IST, that actually made a box that was put in crates of computer,
just like hardware,
electronic stuff,
to
ship it, so that if the shipping crate was subjected to a load above a certain amount, the thing would record it.
Right.
So when the shipping crate got wherever it was going to go, they'd plug in and find out if they were going to accept delivery.
Right. Yeah.
And he said, we could probably use these in the cars.
Huh.
And that was the first black boxes, these blue IST boxes, and then they evolved from that to the ADT things or ADR things that we have now. So I think it was like 93 was the first year we used one of those, and we were quoted as talking about what the G loads, and we got all kinds of hate mail and phone calls because it was above the level of human survivability.
Okay.
And they were like, there's no way that people are subjected to this and get out and walk away.
Right.
And we'd have to remind them that, first of all, we're talking about the chassis, not the body.
Yeah, right.
And the chassis sees it, it's stiffer than the body.
Yeah, right. Sure.
Things like that. And then the next step in that was to figure out how to stick them in the ears. And we kept talking, and actually Steve Alvey was instrumental in making that happen. He had the idea, and I think several other people did too, but we didn't have the technology. And then the technology came along, and we figured out how to stuff these things down in their already existing earpieces.
Right.
And the rest is history.
Yeah.
So just a couple quick things we got to roll through, and then we'll let you out of here.
We do a pass-along question to every guest.
Oh, yeah.
Who's
the next guest?
Well, before that, your pass-along question came from Robert Wickens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so we had lunch with him at Charlie Brown's Pancake House.
Okay.
Yeah, it was excellent. What's the most inconvenient call to duty you've had to deal with in motorsports?
Inconvenient.
Like you're just
Like
about
you
to
were
tee
on
off at your
call.
favorite
Yeah.
golf course or
You're
whatever.
in the
and
bathroom.
Hinchcliffe decided to knock a wall down.
Probably Paul Tracy.
Oh, okay.
We were at the weekend off, okay? We're not supposed to have anything bad happen. My wife and I are like home, and the kids are not home. It's like shipped them off to wherever. And we're out on the deck. It's a summer night out on the deck, and all the stuff, the wine, you got the picture, okay? And about just the time when things are ready to rock and roll, the phone rings, and it's Trammell. Yeah? This is Tracy. Uh-huh. I just had a crash and broke my foot. Paul, we're not racing this weekend. I know. I was in a go-kart.
Was this 93?
So, yeah. It was like, okay, let's put action. So we got him flown to Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I said, be here at 7 o'clock or whatever. He flies in. Bring him to the house. We load him in the car. I'd call the hospital and say, we're coming. They said, we don't have enough help. I said, I'll bring my own help. And took him down there, operated on his foot. My wife kind of circulated. We had lots of help.
Yeah.
None of whom were really trained to be there.
It's just PT.
Yeah, the
It's just
anesthesiologist was there. And then we hauled Tracy out to this place because it's like Labor Day weekend or something. We're having a big party and so on and so forth. We prop him on a deal, and we're all jet skiing and so on and so forth. And he's sleeping in the sun. And
Right.
so, we probably ought to take him inside because he's going to get burned. So on and so forth. And it turned out to not really be that inconvenient except the way it started. That was a little. So
Yeah.
that's probably
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. So tomorrow we're going to have lunch here in Brownsburg with Joey Saldana.
Okay.
If you could ever ask him anything, what would it be?
Why did it take him so long to learn to wear a Hans in his car?
Does stuff like that drive you nuts?
Yeah, a little bit.
Because when we have all these safety things in place, and people are reluctant to use them.
The worst one, and it's comical in a way, but it led to a really good deal, is my wife's engine builder, when she was doing the go-kart stuff, built an engine for one of these little quarter, it's a quarter of a dragster.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
the kids
yeah.
run.
Mini
Yeah.
drags or whatever.
And there were all these kids, and she said, well, let's go, and let's go see the guy. And we went out. I'm looking around, and first of all, probably 70% of the drivers were girls.
Yeah.
And they were all, had shoulder-length hair and so on and so forth. And I'm looking around. There's not a balaclava in the place. They've all got on the Victoria's Secret camisole outfit underneath their fire suit, which would melt in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's like Under Armour.
And I'm like getting, breaking out in a sweat.
Yeah.
My wife says, "You're just here to visit.
You're off the clock."
So finally, I corner a mother whose daughter's got her hair. She's got this ponytail hanging out of her helmet.
Right.
And it's preciously close to the drive shaft. And I'm getting all wound up, and I go up and I start talking to this mom. I'm trying to be nice, and I said, it'd be a really good idea if she had a balaclava and they would braided her hair, flat braided, and put it inside the suit. So, and mom goes, "Well, why do you think she needs all that?" And I said, "Well, fire." She goes, "Why would there be a fire?" I said, I got really snide. This lady and I said, the thing that makes the car go is called an internal combustion engine. Yeah. It makes fire inside of it.
Right.
And it said the fuel that makes the fire is in this thing on the outside. Yeah. And if the car goes upside down, the fuel comes out of the bottle and it will, that was when the BP oil spill was going on. I said that there's a reason they send all this hair down there to soak up the oil.
Right, yeah.
Makes a great wick. Yeah. And my wife is like beside herself. She's like, "Oh, God.
We were just having fun."
Yeah. Just wanted an You got to go home. Well, that led into the youth. We'd started a youth racers program for safety at PRI.
Yeah, cool.
Jeff Horton and I did, and Derek Daly got involved in it. There were a bunch of people it still continues. Yeah. So that was a worthwhile trip, but it just freaked me out.
Yeah, I bet. Before you go, can you walk us through? James Hinchcliffe's crash was pretty intense.
Right.
But the big thing was that nobody really saw coming was that he was pierced through and stuck in the car. Have you guys had something like that before, where you knew you had to?
Well, we've had guys that trying to think. Chilean. I'm blocking down his name.
Salazar.
Right.
Had a piece of suspension that went through his leg.
Yeah.
And that was apparent. I mean, you could see it. There was a kid in an Indy Lights car. I'll think of his name in a minute. His dad is like the quintessential bounty hunter from San Francisco. Very distinctive gentleman and that's what he was, a bounty hunter.
This isn't on, is it?
No.
Bleep that.
He's a Hispanic name.
Okay.
But he got skewered with a piece of suspension.
Yeah.
And same thing happened. It went through his thigh, but when they took him out of the car to pull him out, we never recognized that there was a wound on the other side of the thigh. And that ended up being kind of a big to-do. But having him pinned down like that where you couldn't see it, that was the deal. And I was in communication with the doctors on the track, and I was not at the track when that happened.
Okay.
And actually, I was in the sand pit at the golf course, but practicing.
Yeah.
Because I missed the memo that they were practicing Monday morning after qualifications. I mean, who does that? But anyway, they were like, "Well, what do we do?" I said, "Whatever you got to do to pull him out of the car, because he's going to die."
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just get two big guys and pull him out.
Yeah. When he gets to you, does he still have metal?
No, the metal was out because it was stuck.
Yeah.
It literally was stuck in the car.
Yeah. Okay.
That was so stuck in that car that same day when I went out to look at the car and do what we talked about.
Right.
I stood straddled over the top of the tub and tried to pull that piece up out of the seat. And I'm not the strongest guy on earth, but I'm not the weakest either. And it wouldn't budge.
Yeah. Man.
So anyway,
I know you got to go. And I don't want to close heavy here, but is there one, like you mentioned, Zanardi and more, and is there one incident that keeps you up more than any others, or that you just can't unforget?
You compartmentalize.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of natural. There are things. I operated on a lot of kids with really bad deformities, a lot of cerebral palsy.
Just in the day job, so to speak.
But in my day job. Yeah. But the same thing happens. You lose one of them, and it never leaves you.
And you spent time with these kids.
And so probably Greg was the biggest one, because if I'd have just said, screw it, you can't drive because I can't fix this, and my ego got in the way. And
I understand.
So that was.
So you can, in other words, you can tell yourself 100 times, but you still feel you had a role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most tragic one that just I still feel bad about. Because there was one time doing something really well was the wrong thing to do.
Right. Sounds like technology is definitely in the right direction with IndyCar.
I
It
think
seems
so.
like everybody in that paddock is on the same page. We actually talked with Hinch about this a couple days ago about haters of purity. That's got to be a great
Yeah,
feeling. knowing
The
that
evolution of acceptance of safety
Yeah.
is something I think IndyCar has set the mark for.
Right.
When I started, things I was talking about AJ, taking care of him, some of the stuff I wanted him to do, you'd have thought I was cutting his other thing off.
Yeah.
And it's evolved over time to nobody would say, let's don't do that because it's safer.
Yeah.
They're adaptable, and the younger drivers expect it. They don't tolerate if we know, they want to know.
Right.
And Hinch and Charlie Kimball are two of the out on the cutting edge of tell us everything you know because we want to know.
Yeah. Interesting. How was your dinner?
It's fine. It's good. I
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
That's a health food, and I didn't gorge myself, and my wife would be proud.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we can
I
vouch for it.
I didn't have a filet mignon, a baked potato, and a pound of sour cream.
We appreciate
Yeah,
that.
we
Our
appreciate
budget
that.
appreciate
Yeah.
that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Takuma Sato brought his whole posse with him. We were like, oh boy.
Yeah. So
It's gonna
you
be
made
a
you helped us close that delta.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So-
Well, we appreciate it, and Continental's got the check.
I'm finished.
Terror Bear Trammell, what a guy.
Love him. Great stories, and gave us a crap ton of time.
Crap done?
Yeah, I'm tired. Honestly, I'm tired of bleeps.
All right, fair enough.
Takes way too long.
Thanks again to Acura and Continental,
Tire.
and send them a tweet. Let them know you love us and appreciate their support. Now, are you going to play my favorite song, Sean?
Boy, am I. Here's the song. Why, it's Pradagino. I think that's how you pronounce it. Pradagino. They are on SoundCloud, and they gave us a song called Get Mines. That's it, Get Mines. Pradagino.
Major League.
Hey, come on. Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. That I'm gonna get mine. Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. 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 I manifest my destiny. I don't need nobody ever trying to get the best of me. Let the record show I'm working harder than the rest of these whack-ass rappers in the game. I told them rest in peace, cause I keep shooting. Ken and Cam Newton, on my Dr. Dre, cause I'm always producing. I'm the main one to keep them rooting. I guess the bread, homie, free of that gluten. I'm just a sign of the times. Speaking of the times, baby, I'm gon' get mine. Unofficially, I lost my mind. Stick to the script, not pull out the bind. Cause it's not where it's supposed to be. Like you against me, you're not close to me. Yeah, moments like these mean the most to me. So fill your glass up and let's toast to these. Let's toast to these. Let's toast to these. Gon' fill your glass up and let's toast to these. Moments like these mean the most to me. So fill your glass up and let's toast to these. Hey, tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. That I'm gonna get mine. Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. 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 That I'm gonna get. That I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, lights, camera, action. Murder this beat, that's a fatal attraction. Look at them diamonds, are fluent in fashion. Keep the light shining, let you feel the passion. I'm surrounded by all the success, and girl, you got a body with all them assets. And I can tell you how hard it gets when the media takes these words out of context. I'm like America, who am I gonna bomb next? Still in the state where they don't wanna mess. We that team with the dream complex. Like DJ Khaled, I'm the one, we the best. I work all night, I don't need no rest. Cause I really gotta get this off my chest. Here we go. New school rappers I am not impressed with. Know that I'm still not the one to mess with. Not the one to mess with. Know that I'm still not the one to mess with. These new school rappers I'm not impressed with. Know that bet I'm still not the one to mess with. Hey, tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. That I'm gonna get mine. Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. That I'm gonna get mine. Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night that I'm gonna get mine. Yeah, tonight's the night